This passage is about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and its effects on the political system. The author says that AI is going to have an impact on political systems, democracies, and autocratic political systems, and he talks about how. All right, let's quickly go through the passage before we look at the questions. Machine learning may increase polarization. What will it do? It is going to increase polarization, division, re engineering the online world to promote political division. It will certainly increase disinformation in the future, generating convincing fake speech at scale. So this he starts off by talking of the negatives. It's going to be increase polarization. It will increase disinformation. It will generate fake speeches at scale. Means on a large scale you will have fake speeches. Fake speech means disinformation. The challenges to autocracies are more subtle but possibly more corrosive. Where you're talking of autocratic systems, dictatorial systems, he says the challenges will be more subtle. It may not be as open as an open system, but it may also be more corrosive, means more dangerous. Just as machine learning reflects and reinforces the divisions of democracy, it may confound autocracies, creating a false appearance of consensus and concealing underlying social fissures until it is too late. Now, how is it going to affect autocracies? He says that machine learning reflects and reinforces the divisions of democracy. This he has said in the first paragraph. In the first line, it increases polarization. It does that in autocracies too, but it may confound means surprise autocracies. In what way? It may create a false appearance of consensus that the general public is all in agreement and harmony, and conceal, hide these social fissures, societal fissures, the cracks in the society. It will hide it until it is too late. Therefore, it is going to be so. It does divide a democracy also, but why is it more dangerous in an autocracy? Because it may hide these divisions until it is too late. So the autocrats will be taken by surprise. The autocratic system is taken by surprise. They think everything is going well. Society, there is no division in society, and the cracks appear when it is too late to heal them. Early pioneers of AI, including the political scientist Herbert Simon, realized that AI technology has more in common with markets, bureaucracies, and political institutions than with simple engineering applications. So he says this is a strange, unexpected fact. Like AI has more in common with markets, bureaucracies, and political institutions than with simple engineering applications. You would think AI has a lot of things in common with engineering applications, but Herbert Simon says it has more in common with markets and bureaucracies and political institutions. Another pioneer of artificial intelligence, Norbert Wiener, described AI as a cybernetic system. Now, whenever there is many of you from a tech background uh, will immediately say, I know what's a cybernetic system. Even if you didn't know, even if you don't know anything about a word used in the passage, generally the author explains what he means by the word in that context. Here he means AI is a cybernetic system, a system that can respond and adapt to feedback. So if there's any definition, any confusion, what's a cybernetic system? As far as this passage is concerned, what's the meaning? One that can respond and adapt to feedback. So, what's that AI system? An AI system is a cybernetic system, one which can adapt and respond to feedback. That's it. Next, what is much less well understood is that democracy and authoritarianism are cybernetic systems too. These political systems are also cybernetic systems. They also adapt and react to feedback. They're also dependent on feedback. Under both forms of rules, governments enact policies and then try to figure out whether these policies have succeeded or failed. So, in whether it's a democracy or an autocratic system, the government has certain policies that it implements. Now, it wants to know, did these policies succeed or not? In democracies, votes and voices provide powerful feedback about whether a given approach is really working. In a democracy, we all speak out. Hey, this is good, this is bad. We protest, we write letters to the editor, we speak to the press. So we have forums in which we can articulate our objections, our support, whatever. Authoritarian systems have historically had a much harder time getting good feedback. Democracy, because by default the system is such that policymakers get feedback, but authoritarian systems have a difficult time getting a proper feedback because of the way the system is there, right? You have one very powerful ruler, you have a small body of bureaucrats close to the authoritarian ruler who controls the system. So getting feedback is not that easy. Before the information age, they relied not just on domestic intelligence, but also on petitions and clandestine opinion surveys to try to figure out what their citizens believed. So, before the information age, AI, machine learning, and all this, how did autocrats get feedback about their policies? This is the way. They relied on domestic intelligence. So, they had spies going in the society to find out what's happening. Domestic intelligence. The other one is petitions. And the third one is clandestine, secret opinion surveys. Clandestine opinion surveys to find out the citizen's opinion on any issue. Now, machine learning is disrupting traditional forms of democratic feedback. Traditional forms of democratic feedback is voices and votes. You're not happy with somebody, you speak out. You're not happy with somebody, you don't vote him to power. But this traditional forms of democratic feedback is being disrupted by machine learning. Why? New technologies facilitate disinformation and worsen existing biases, taking prejudice hidden in data and confidently transforming it into incorrect assertions. So they are responsible for the spread of disinformation. They are facilitating disinformation. They're making it easy for the spread of disinformation, and they are worsening existing biases. You have certain biases, certain strong opinions against somebody, certain irrational opinions against somebody, judgments against somebody. These are being worsened. Why? How? Taking prejudice hidden in data. So you have data, you've collected data, that data itself has prejudice built into it, and confidently transforming it into incorrect assertions. Oh, the data says this, therefore it must be this. To autocrats fumbling in the dark, meanwhile, machine learning looks like an answer to their prayers. So for them, because they didn't have any proper way of feedback, to them, this machine learning seems to be an answer to their prayers. At least I have a system where I can get feedback about what the people are thinking about the policies. Such technology can tell rulers whether the subjects like what they are doing without the hassle of surveys or political risks of open debates and elections. This is what a democracy does. For an authoritarian regime, it can now get its feedback without bothering to go through these processes, surveys or elections or whatever. For this reason, many observers have fretted, worried that advances in AI will only strengthen the hand of dictators and further enable them to control their society. They're getting feedback, they know who is thinking what, and this will only empower them, make them more powerful. It will strengthen them to control societies. This is what some people worry about. The truth is more complicated, but it's not as simple as that. Oh, you have machine learning, authoritarian governments are going to become stronger. But the truth, the actual position is something different. What is more complicated? Let's see how. Bias is visibly a problem for democracies. Now, we have a problem of bias. But because it is more visible, citizens can mitigate it through other forms of feedback. So you have biased feedback, you have disinformation that you're getting through wrong data, through biased data. But this bias is so open that there are citizens who realize that this bias is there. They can lessen this bias by going through other forums. There are other forums by which they can show the true picture without bias. When, for example, and he's given a good example, When, for example, a racial group sees that hiring algorithms are based against them, they can protest, seek redress with some chance of success. They'll say, look, this algorithm is not right. They can protest, they can find a solution with some success. Authoritarian countries are probably at least as prone to bias as democracies are, perhaps more so. Much of this bias is likely to be invisible, especially to the decision makers at the top. Now, because of the way the system is, they also have the same bias. They also have, if they are relying on IT and AI, they also have the same bias, right? But in a democracy, the citizens can speak out, then can seek alternate ways to protest, to show their protest. In authoritarian system, this bias is likely to be invisible, especially to the decision maker. You may suffer it and you may realize there's a bias, but for the decision maker at the top, he can't see it. It's subtle. That makes it far more difficult to correct, even if the leaders can see that something needs correcting. They know something needs correcting, but because the bias is invisible, because the decision makers at the top cannot know what is the situation, uh, this becomes very difficult. Even if they know something is wrong, they cannot correct it. It makes it more difficult to correct. Contrary to conventional wisdom, AI can seriously undermine autocratic regimes by reinforcing their own ideologies and fantasies at the expense of a finer understanding of the real world. Now, in the second paragraph or so, he said how some people worry that AI and the information age can actually empower and strengthen an autocratic system and lead to more control of societies. That is conventional wisdom. He says, contrary to conventional wisdom, AI can seriously undermine, it can seriously weaken autocratic regimes. And how is it going to do that? It's going to reinforce their own ideologies and fantasies, but at the expense of what is happening in the real world. So you are here, you're reinforcing your own ideologies, your own theories, but you do not understand what's happening in the real world. Democratic countries may discover that when it comes to AI, the key challenge of the 21st century is not winning the battle for technological dominance. Who is technologically superior and dominant in society? That is not going to be a problem for democracies, at least not so much as the next line. Instead, they will have to contend with authoritarian countries that find themselves in the throes of an AI fueled spiral of delusion. The problem they're going to face is not that they is not a competition for technological domination. That may be there, but the bigger problem is they have to deal with these autocracies. And what is the problem with these autocracies? The autocracies have been fueled by delusion. And what is the delusion? A wrong idea of what they are, a delusion, a false idea of what they are. And from where does it get it? The AI, with all its biases, everything will give them an idea, will give them a delusion, and democracies will find that more difficult to deal with. You have an aristocrat, you have an authoritarian system where the leader thinks, I'm the greatest, people love me, so he has certain delusions, wrong impressions about what it is. My country is the greatest, the people like it, people support this war that I'm conducting against somebody, whatever. And democracies will have a hard time dealing with that. That man has no connection with what is happening in the real world. And that is, according to the author, that is going to be the greatest challenge for a democracy to deal with. Not technological dominance, but that. According to the passage, which of the following represents the biggest challenge posed by AI? In the passage, the author has mentioned a lot of challenges, but he has also mentioned which one is the biggest or the key challenge. So we'll go back to the passage after reading the options. It will certainly increase disinformation in the future, thereby generating convincing fake speeches at a large scale. Yes, this is a threat. It will reinforce social and racial divisions in society. He said it will increase polarization and therefore social and racial division. This has also been mentioned as a threat. Democratic countries will have to contend with delusional autocrats. This also has been mentioned. It will strengthen authoritarian regimes. No, the author has said it will. People, conventional wisdom thinks it will strengthen, but it might actually weaken authoritarian regimes. So, D clearly is not the answer. Three challenges have been given. Which one does the author regard as the greatest challenge? Let's go back to the passage. First paragraph, he had mentioned options A and B as the challenges. But here, what does he say? Democracies may discover that when it comes to AI, the key challenge of the 21st century is not winning the battle for technological dominance. Instead, they have to contend with authoritarian countries that find themselves in the throes of an AI fueled spiral of delusion. So, if delusional authoritarian regimes caught in a delusion, in a wrong idea of their power, superiority, of their society being in harmony, whatever. That, according to the author, is the key challenge. Therefore, the correct answer will be the option which mentions that. That is option C. So, the correct answer is option C.